Hey, this is Anney.
And Samantha.
And welcome to Stuff I Never Told You, a production of iHeartRadio.
And as it is the tail end of AAPI or API History Month, we are closing it out with an activist, a writer, and a poet, Selina Leem. Now, Leem is an activist from the Marshall Islands and has been a leader for her community for a while now. At the age of 18, Leem was the youngest delegate to speak at the COP21, where she spoke about the impact of climate change and what was happening to her homeland.
So the Republic of the Marshall Islands is located in the Micronesia region in the northwestern Pacific Ocean. Here's some more information from Britannica.com, quote, Marshall Islands, country in the central Pacific Ocean, it consists of some of the easternmost islands of Micronesia. The Marshalls are composed of more than 1,200 islands and islets and two parallel chains of coral atolls, the Ratak, or sunrise, to the east and the Ralik, or sunset, to the west. None of the 29 low-lying coral atolls and the 5 coral islands in the Marshall Group rises to more than 20 feet, 6 meters above high tide. The islands are coral caps set on the rims of submerged volcanoes rising from the ocean floor. The island units of the Marshalls are scattered over about 180,000 square miles of the Pacific.
And because of where the country is located, as well as the makeup of the land, they're in a pretty precarious state, especially with the ongoing climate crisis. Here's something from HakkaiMagazine.com. To say that the Republic of the Marshall Islands is vulnerable to sea level rise is an understatement. 2 million square kilometers of Pacific Ocean surround the country's smattering of islands and tiny atolls, most of which are less than 2 meters above sea level. Since 1993, the surrounding ocean has risen by more than 12 centimeters. Today, it regularly floods some neighborhoods, fields, roads, and even graveyards. And this is just the beginning. If glaciers and polar ice sheets continue melting at the current rate, which is likely, even if global carbon emissions are capped, climate scientists expect the ocean around the Marshall Islands to rise as much as 1.3 meters by the year 2100. Powerful storms and extra big waves could temporarily push it even higher. Without drastic intervention, much of the country could be rendered uninhabitable.
And this is why Leem has become a leader for climate justice. She has been working since her teens to not only bring attention to what is happening to her home, but also advocating and pushing political leaders to make change. When speaking about her work and her home, she said, "My people are counting on me to share what is happening in the vast ocean of the Pacific. Too small for people to see, too far for people to reach, and a number of 52,634 people too little for people to care. Our islands are not just barely their dots on the maps for many to turn a blind eye. They are our home."
So in an interview with Thread.com, she talks about why she began her work. She said, "As a child, my grandfather would reprimand me and tell me that the ice in the North and South Poles were melting and that the water would eventually flood our islands. This was terrifying. I would have nightmares of my family drowning and me desperately trying to save them. This made me extremely conscious of the changing environment around me, and I began to pick up on increasing temperatures and rising sea levels year in, year out. I quickly realized just how dire the situation had become and decided I had to do something about it."
And she has been speaking up about her concerns, including permafrost melting, forest fires, and droughts, which continue to threaten her home. And educating others and helping others to understand the crisis is something that she does often. She told worldbank.org, quote, "Climate change impacts gender inequality, high unemployment rate, high school dropouts, non-communicable diseases are some of the biggest issues we are facing right now. Our country is poor, and a huge part of our government's budget comes from the United States government funding. I believe education is the first step to addressing these issues. Once we know what they are, what are the causes, the history, how it impacts us, why they must and need to be addressed, and the support from our family, our community, our government, and internationally, then we are on the right path. It is important that there is a clear understanding and communication between the government and its people. Right now, the entire world's biggest threat is climate change."
Not only has she used her voice to speak up in international conferences in front of powerful world leaders, but has used her voice in performing spoken word and poetry. She was also featured in Before the Flood, a documentary talking about the climate crisis in which she talks about her land. Apparently, it was produced by Leonardo DiCaprio. That's a bit tidbit. There you go.
Well, thank you for the tidbit. In the same thread.com interview, she talks about the power of the arts and why creativity is important in her activism. She said, quote, "Creativity connects us with our core, which is our emotion and what makes us human. I'm privileged to have been born in this era because it's so easy to mental health, setting boundaries, and how to move forward with my generation. We're part of a community so that when eco-anxiety is gripping my heart and I feel so overwhelmed by the state of things, I'm able to feel grounded and remind myself that I'm not alone. We're all in this together, and that if I need to take a break to look after myself, it's okay because they'll keep fighting for me in the meantime." And she goes on talking about why storytelling is an important medium, quote, "because it's human. It's how my grandparents taught me to keep our cultures, proverbs, morals, and values alive. This is why I find it a very powerful and effective tool to use."
Right. And obviously, her works have gained some notoriety, including the fact that she was nominated for a contributing performance in the Best Indigenous Language Album category at the 33rd Golden Melody Awards. And I'm sure we'll hear more from her because her work is beautiful. And with that, we wanted to read a bit of her poem. And this is just like a small snippet of her poem that she presented to the COP26. It was the poem that we mentioned earlier, "I Grew Giant." And all BT dubs, I'm going to put this in there. They also speak Marshallese in here. Obviously, I do not know this language. I could not really just find a pronunciation or translation for it for me, which is good because she did this purposefully. So I'm going to try my best and excuse my pronunciation. If you actually speak Marshallese and want to send in a corrected version, please do, because we would love to hear it. So here we go. "Now is what I need you to respond to. I've seen bones of loved ones spilling out of broken graves, torn by the angry waves. Nightmares haunt me at night and follows me throughout the day. The terror I feel, act now. I stand here. Najjatukijin. For my people, my home. Non armaj rao, non iju jiku. Our corals never grew to be the giant we needed them to be, to protect us from the rising water. But I did, to 5-3. The giant to protect my home from the waves of deniers and work hand in hand with those fighting for our planet. Together, each of us, like the tiny corals, my friends, and I put out in a horizontal line near the outer reef, grow tall to stay, to be giants for our planet." And again, this is just a small piece, and her whole piece was beautiful. You can actually look this up. They do have it on medium.com where they speak about her a little bit and give the entirety of the poem. But yes, obviously, this is really, really important work. And I was admitting to Anney earlier that my geography is way off because I did not know that the Republic of the Marshall Islands existed and didn't know its history and what was happening there. Obviously, there's a lot happening in islands and countries like these are very heavily affected by what is happening with climate change. And they have become, the people of the Marshall Islands have become leaders in this movement. I mean, true leaders with some amazing plans. And I didn't even talk about what they've been doing and the whole layout they have to try to protect their lands. Because as Leem told another interview that she knows people who've lived there all their lives, like their families from there, and they said they would drown on that island before ever leaving it because they love their home so much. So it's definitely something that we need to be talking about more. And also is acknowledging in the fact that, yes, again, I feel real ignorant, not even knowing that the existence of this country was here and even the impact that the U.S. had on them, which was not great. But the fact that they were able to get their independence and now doing what they're trying to do to save their land.
Really important work as always. And yeah, listeners, if you have any further information or any thoughts about this or anything related to this, experiences or anything like that, please let us know. You can email us at stuffmediamomstuff@iheartmedia.com. You can find us on Twitter at momstuffpodcast or on Instagram and TikTok at Stuff I've Never Told You. We're also on YouTube. We have a TeePublic store, merchandise. We have a book you can get wherever you get your books. Thanks as always to our super producer Christine, our executive producer Maya, and our contributor Joey.
Thank you.
And thanks to you for listening. Stuff I Never Told You is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, you can check out the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, wherever you listen to your favorite shows.